Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
Don't say we don't treat you good here on Highbury Squad, Squaddies. We've got a fantastic guest today, Martin Bengtsson, who had written an autobiography which was very compelling about being a young footballer and trying to make it in the beautiful game in the Shadow of San Siro, now turned into a film. It was the film that was sent by Sweden for Oscar nominated foreign movies. It's compelling, it's engaging, it's gripping. I absolutely loved it. I love his story. Tiger's film is released July 1st in UK cinemas, and joining us on today's show is Martin himself. Martin, welcome to Highbury Squad Central. Hope you're well. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for inviting me. Nice to be
Yeah,
here.
no, it's great to have you here. And I've been a fan of football my entire life, and all of our listeners, and they come from different parts of the world. So culturally, we have the same experience, but also as different cultures, we have grown up very differently.
Mm.
Um, I wanted to start the conversation with you in terms of I know when I fell in love with football. Most of our listeners know when they fell in love with football. When did your love affair with football start in its purest form?
I think I was around five. First time I played football with others, and it kindergarten as we call it. When you're around 4 or 5. We had a guy coming, and this was around in the beginning of the 90s. Then he had a football with him. He started to work in this kindergarten, and he made all the kids go out and play. And I was quite shy at the time, and like to be inside and so on. But he kind of uh, tried and tried and tried with me. And after a while, I went out and played. And what I remember is that I was so afraid of getting trapped with all these people, because when you're in this age, everyone is running towards the ball, and
Mhm.
that's a scary moment. So I
Yeah.
remember I placed myself just by the goalpost because I was safe there. But then standing there long enough, also the ball came out of this group, and I was in perfect position to score a goal. And then this guy, he was like, "Wow, what a run, Martin! You're a natural talent. You know where the ball will come." So I think from the beginning it was just the easiest way to become popular. Uh, I just had to stand by the goalpost and score a goal while the rest did the hard work. So I
So
think somewhere there it started. But then, of course, I mean, when I was around 9 or something, I really started to dig in and watch a lot of Italian football on television, because they just
mm,
released a show that was on Sundays where they showed Italian games, basically.
the Football Gazzetta show.
It's in Sweden. It was called Uno Cris Due.
Yeah.
So it was a similar, I think, thing, or maybe the same, but
Hmm.
different, But they showed these teams like AC Milan and Inter and Juventus and so on. So it was around that time when I really, started to fall in love with football, and especially this team then, AC Milan, who had a great striker in Marco van Basten, the Dutch player, who was,
Yeah.
my favorite. So
Scored one of the greatest volleys of all time.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think anyway, and the Dutch were always fun to watch. So
yeah.
do you feel was your talent like protege esque, or did you have to work hard at it? So after this period where you discovered, I love watching football, I love
Mm,
playing.
mm.
When you think back, do you think you were a protege, or did you think like, this is something I'm passionate about, I'm going to grind, and this is where I want to be?
Yeah, it was passion and hard work. I mean, I set up a goal after I saw Van Basten and these players playing at San Siro at 9. It was almost over a night, where I wrote down on a piece of paper, like, okay, I need to practice this hard, this many hours a day in order to come there. And in this age, around 9, 8, 9, I was very, open to the influences and listened a lot to, radio shows and television and read and so on, like trying to figure out how do you become a world class football player. And what they talked about, for example, in an article about the Brazilian Ronaldo was that he used to practice 6 hours a day back in his backyard in Brazil. So for me, like around 8, 9, it became maths basically. So I figured out, okay, I need to practice between 5 or 6 hours a day. So I made a schedule. So I practiced around 3, 4 hours before I went to the regular training with my team. So I came up in this numbers of 5, 6 hours a day, and then working on the body, sit-ups, push-ups, all that to become strong. So it was I started early to practice as a elite professional, basically.
Yeah. And that's evident in the film, in those moments where you're in your apartment and you're alone, you're doing the push-ups, you're doing the sit-ups, and then you're writing in your journal. But prior to that move, do you feel those moments where you started taking it seriously, you were training, you were building towards something, was the last time you felt a purity with the sport that you loved?
Yeah, it's a good question. Both yes and no, because the further you are from the dream, the more kind of uh, nostalgia you have around this journey, and where you're heading and so on. There's a lot more dream into it, and the closer you get to it, the more you get behind the curtain, basically, and the realness and the reality of what the football world is about, and so both yes and no. At the same time, even when I was feeling bad later when I was playing in Inter, or while I was dealing with depression, I could have moments when I was on the pitch where I mean in real life really could be myself and enjoy it.
Mhm.
Football also had that. It was sometimes also a possibility to escape from thoughts that you had outside the pitch and so on. So I would say both
Yeah.
yes and no on that question.
Yeah, when I talk to footballers, one of the things they always say is no matter what's going on in the exterior or the outside world, when they're on the pitch, there's it's kind of a come to church moment, whether it's spiritual or it's, escapism,
Mm.
that's the moment. But I want,
Yeah, and it's simple. It's simple in that way. It's simple rules, and you know what you're supposed to do. You have a purpose in that moment.
Mhm.
So the more existential life feels, when you're outside, and then it really can, as you say, it can become this realm where you feel like you
Yeah.
can, yeah, let some hard things off your shoulder.
Yeah. And would it be so before I want to ask you before I get to kind of the Inter Milan experience,
Mm.
when I was watching the film, I couldn't help but think when you even took that journey and before when you were on your way to Italy, even before you got there was not a complexity about you, but you were a deep thinker, perhaps on a different plane than maybe other young men of your age. And the intensity and the spotlight of European football, especially at a storied, legendary club like Inter Milan, would highlight those maybe insecurities tenfold.
Mm.
Do you think it's fair to say that when you went in there, you were definitely someone who kind of thought on a different level to your generation, maybe was a little bit deeper, and so therefore when you arrive there, your senses are heightened because you're already kind of maybe more elevated than other people at your age?
Yeah, I think you're right in that. I think I was quite sensitive. I mean, as a kid and also as a teenager and so on, and yeah, took in a lot of the world, and as I said before, like, and that can be a very good thing, because when it comes to creativity and other, and learning about yourself and so on. But if in the in certain environments that can be quite tough to have that
Mhm.
sensitivity. So yeah, I would say that I stepped into this world with a certain sensitivity that played part in why it ended like it ended and how things unfolded. And that is a complexity to this story, as I've written in the book, but it's also somehow, a layer in the movie or highlighted in the movie, that it's like, what's the individual and what's the what's the surrounding, who's to blame
Right.
for this person's collapse or this suicide attempt, like what happens. And for me, when I wrote the book, and it was very important to stay in the complex, because a lot of times journalists have said, like, okay, he wasn't strong enough, or this or this happened. They try to find very easy solutions and conclusions for what happened. And what I wanted to do with this story was really dig into the complex, like what are the mechanisms around my collapse, like around what happened. Yes, it was the surrounding, but it was also what I stepped in with, like a certain sensitivity, a certain look at life. So yeah, for me, it's been important to that we can talk about football and these things on a complex level, because it have been simplified for I don't know how long, and that's not good for the players who are actually in it. We need to be more mature when we look at these things.
Yeah. You bring up a fundamental kind of point and perspective, because we YouTubers or podcasters or broadcasters, we watch games. Some of us are affiliated to clubs. Our show mostly to the Arsenal, but we cover the game at a global level. And you just bring up something poignant, because my co-host on the show is Kevin Campbell, who scored a lot of goals for Arsenal, Everton, Nottingham Forest. Three of his ex-clubs now in the Premier League, came through the ranks as a youngster, and a huge talent. And I also come from a generation X, where our parents built us up to not complain so much. And we were the taboo generation, I think, Martin. We were the ones that couldn't really talk about this stuff, couldn't express ourselves. If you did, you were a freak. If you kind of went down that road, you were a loser. Just kind of expressing the reality of what I saw with Generation X. And then as a podcaster, I get on here after games and I criticize players, and I praise players too. And I feel like there has to be this balance. But I feel like in the time where you experienced what you did, there was no voice for the young player, whereas today there is a voice for the young player. I can't imagine how that must have felt, because it was our road or the high road. Is that a fair way of analyzing maybe the differences in baby boomers to Gen X to the generation that came after, that maybe have helped spearhead this openness of talking about, mental health especially?
Yeah, absolutely. It's how I look at it as well. It's a generational thing, but it's also a male thing. I mean, for us who grow up in the football at the time, yeah, as you say, it was my way or the highway. Like there was no real interest from what I saw that to discuss organization or how you treat young players or how you organize around young players. It was more like, okay, you are strong enough or you're not, and that combined with an upgrowing where this is very centered for a lot of guys, where you are weak if you speak out or show your emotions and so on, or it can be used against you also when you're in a team. It creates a dangerous cocktail, because if we can't be vulnerable or show emotions, I believe that this frustration or anger or whatever it is that builds up inside, it will take another way. It will come out as violence against others, so it will come out against yourself, violence against yourself. So that bubble that football is, with a lot of matrichism and all that, it can create a very toxic environment that end up in mental health problems also. That's what I want to show, that it's not that you it's not that you come in there and then you're like, oh, we have mental health. Sometimes it's very easy to say that it's like, oh, we have this problem with mental health, but we really need to look at the structures. Like, how are the young players treated? How do we look at them? What pressure is on them? What kind of exposure is on them? What does it do to a person to have that pressure on you, or run into arena for 80,000, or being trashed in the media? Like, what does it do to a person? That's what I want to point the finger at.
No, and I think your voice is so important because you've been through the experience and you can speak to it in such a graceful way that others, can't, but also in a very authentic, real way that people need to understand. As I was watching the film, the progression of the depression is evident, and one of the things that I think the director does really well, who I really like, directed a film that I love, Borg versus McEnroe, does a fantastic job in showing kind of the build up without anyone around you, maybe barring one person, really knowing what you're going through. And I think that is the toughest part of all when it comes to dealing with your inner demons and those experiences. And I think the film does really well of building that up to the point of you feel you have no answers. As you wrote the book and then you got involved in the film, were you happy with how that progression happened in terms of its authenticity with your
Yeah,
experience?
yeah. For me, it was important then that the most important thing was that Ronnie stayed true to the core journey. The essence of this journey of having a goal, fighting so hard for the goal, and then getting trapped in your dream and not knowing the way out. And that in combination with the age that he's in, which it's a natural time to have those existential questions. But the interesting thing and the horrific thing is that when it happens, when you are actually in your dream, and it
Hmm.
becomes a dangerous question: who am I? Am I supposed to be here? All that. So for me, it was, in the talks with Ronnie, that was like kind of, I gave him a lot of freedom in creating his piece of art. As long as it was true to this core essence and core journey that is Martin's journey, basically.
Okay, so let's rewind just a little bit before we go back. Did you have a choice of another club before you chose Inter? Or was it Inter came and you were a Serie A fan and boom, that was it for you? Or were there other clubs that had come in for you at that time, Martin?
Uh, I mean, at that time, it was Inter, and then it was this Premier club in Sweden that I played for and that I had already debuted in. But the year before, I had been in Chelsea and Ajax. So there was a lot of clubs, of course, scouting me. I was the captain at the under 17s national team and so on. So I had a lot of clubs, scouting and so on. But I did two of these kind of trials with Chelsea and Ajax before I went to Inter the year after. So, but
What was the difference? Can you just explain? Because a lot of fans, they're always like, why doesn't a player choose our club? Why does he go there? Ajax, legendary club. Chelsea have become, one of the most winningest modern day clubs. Into a story club in Italian football. What made you choose in the end? What are the differences for someone of that age? Is it your parents making the decision or is it you making the decision?
no, I made a decision. But because I had set out as a 9-year-old to one day step into San Siro, uh, and I mean, AC Milan was my club, and I ended up in the competing team, really, Inter. So it's it's quite funny in a way. But for me, when I got this offer from Inter, it went quick to repaint your backstory like in the right colors from you know red and black to blue and black. But I think I had a good impression when I was coming to Inter, and I liked the style of playing, and they believed in me, and we talked about my position and how they wanted to play football. It was very technical, very ball on the ground and passed and all that. I really liked it in Ajax as well. I mean, it was kind of a similar style, even though it was more open game. In Chelsea, that was the first ever trial I did. So I was very, coming big eyes, very young. I stepped into the wrong dressing room in the first team. I took a toast because they were there in the room, and then Graham Lesaw came in and shouted at me. So I had it quite,
Who was manager then? Was it
start.
who was manager then? Vialli or Ranieri or Hullet?
Ranieri, I think it was
Ranieri.
Ranieri. Yeah, but they had. I mean, I met some of the first team players that were really nice, Van der Sar and Sola and Bogarde, and but they also had such a star team. So it's hard when you come there and you start in the a lower team, and then to have a chance to reach it. And I wasn't ready for it then. I was, I would say, and also others would say, like when I came to Inter, I was ready. That's how I felt.
Do you feel that Inter was a cultural issue from growing up in Sweden? It was different to maybe growing up in Italy, or was it a cultural issue having experienced Chelsea and Ajax? Was it a cultural issue with the club?
I would say it's it differed in culture, definitely. But I wouldn't say it had not so much to do with Italy. I think it was this club at this time, and that of course it's affected maybe by a culture in Italy. But culture is also such a big, broad kind of idea. But what it was definitely, what it definitely had was this very kind of macho way of looking at young players, and not really a preparation and an organization that was that could take care of such a group that was also very differentiated. It was like people coming from all over. So I think they had challenges in making that work, and that was, I think, both organizational but also in ways around attitude. That is more of a broader kind of problem or have been in football.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna lob a couple questions here. Super Kevin Campbell is a co-host on our show, and he has played for Arsenal and Everton and Nottingham Forest as well. Now he has 3 clubs that he played for back in the Premier League. But like you, he grew up very young through the Arsenal system, and he wanted to throw out a couple of questions for you, player to player, today. So here we go. Super Kevin Campbell, guys, asking Martin questions about his story and his experience as a young footballer.
Hi Martin, Kevin Campbell here. I hope you're well. Sophie, squaddies, at ease. Hi Martin, I've got 2 questions actually. Really good to have you on the show. The first question is, what do you think the football club could have done anything else in their power to help you through what you were going through? And added to that, what one thing would you say was the most hindering experience out of everything that you went through? Because we know there's a lot of people in the world who go through certain things, and you were a young man at the time in a different country, and I'm sure there'll be 101 things going through your mind. But I just want to know if there was one particular thing that really hindered you, and if you could divulge how you got by it, or how you didn't, obviously, that would be great. Anyway, Martin, look after yourself. Sorry I can't be with you, but look after yourself and take good care. And Sophie and squaddies, Kev out and at ease. Bye.
I always love it when someone who's been in the shoes asks the question. Even I see it from a fan perspective, but Kevin sees it from a total play perspective.
Yeah, no, it's nice. Now he asked there around what the club could have done. I mean, the general answer is that clubs then and clubs now need to put effort and money and time into, how they organize around young players, and that in specific, I think clubs need more, people professionalized in psychology and, therapists and all that. You have in most clubs a lot of doctors for almost every different bone in the body, but not so many doctors for the soul and for the brain, and that's such an important part of the game. And I think the football world would actually, on a performance level on the pitch, they would gain from really working on these things, because I believe personally that if a player feels good and feel they have a safe and good environment, it will show on the pitch as well, because you will dare more, you will feel like you're more connected to the players you are, working with, and so you will fight harder for them. All these things are connected into how you create a good environment for them. So that's that I would say.
Mhm. And then Kev's second question was, what do you feel that was your major obstacle, like, or what hindered you, personally? Of course, dealing with mental health issues and depression, I asked you at the top of the show, was that something that maybe you felt before you even went there and the inter experience exasperated that? Or when you got there, was there an adversary? In the movie, you can, sometimes they take poetic license, but of course, a couple of the Italian players are shown as bullies. Was that something that also exasperated the situation?
Yeah, I think it did. I mean, it was a tough environment in many ways, and but I think, I mean, the one thing is, the narrow perspective of what a football player can be. I think that was my main obstacle, and that uh, I mean, in real life, it was I started to write during my depression, and
Hmm.
they basically took away my papers and said in a football player's room there should not be papers laying around. So this, you know, to have the possibility to express yourself, to have an output is super important. It was super important for me, and to find out that I wasn't allowed, or that was not part of what it was to be a football player. That was the main, I would say, in real life, the main kind of uh, obstacle. And no, I didn't find a way through it. That was part of the what triggered
Yes.
this event. So I think this perspective is something that is important. And in the movie, you see, I mean, Martin struggling with this because he finds the girl Vibeke, who, opens something else. He starts to explore who he is outside the pitch more. Find different layers in himself. And when he gets in a conflict around that with the club, he also gets lost. And so that's how I see Ronnie have used this real experience in a way, and
Yeah.
and and dramatized it uh, uh, in another way, but with the same kind of message and meaning.
She was almost like the muse, the vehicle to understand that there's something greater than just this. But
Yeah.
for our listeners, it's very important because, Martin, I want you to know we have lots of listeners in the UK, of course, and they can catch the film on July 1st. You guys all love this movie. There's not a lot of sports driven movies that come out, and this one is definitely special and compelling and engaging. And it touched my heart because we have a lot of listeners, not only from the UK, but around the world, who write to us. And when we're doing a live show, Martin, talk to us in chat about especially how these last few years in life have become a bit of a struggle mentally.
Mm.
There's a lot that has been going on. The chaos is louder than ever. And you survived the biggest hurdle in your life. And I know from the letters that we get and the emails and the DMs that there are a lot of people out there that talk openly about their struggles.
Mm.
And for someone who's worn their shoes, I think there's such a positive light to your story that you came out of the other side and you knew what you then wanted in life and totally grabbed it by the hands. And I'd love for our listeners who are struggling right now and going through similarly, how you can express to them that when you come out of that dark tunnel and you see the light, that there are things that are possible to find that happiness or that happy, environment again.
Yeah. No, I do believe that the movie and the book, but the movie holds a hope, definitely,
Hmm.
and when we end on a hope. And for me, of course, it was super hard to get up out of bed again. But my help was through therapy for a long time, also supporting family and so on, but also to you know be in this darkness, stay in that darkness and look around and really dig deep into what I really wanted. When this dream was broken and lost, what what did I want, and let that take some time. So, and then, I mean, yeah, it's everyone's life is different, but for me, I mean, writing became the thing that was, first of all, therapeutic in that way, to start to get a
Hmm.
language for things, and then slowly turning into work. And I'm very happy uh, that I have writing, and that it's such a simple thing that you can, that can help so much, you know, uh, even though if you do it for work, or if you do it just as a way of, uh, reaching into yourself and starting to, explore, or, get rid of things or whatever. It's a very simple and good medicine, to actually write.
Yeah.
So
Because sometimes talking to people can be so hard, and that's kind of part of the issue. But if you write and put things on paper, it's like you're talking, but you're actually having the conversation with yourself, which is
yeah,
where a lot of those things start, right?
yeah. And it can also be escapism. You can create worlds, and that's what I
Hmm.
like about it too. You can create worlds that you want to be in, and that can give, some space from the world, as you say today, that it's, yeah, many times very chaotic, very, a lot of inputs all the time, and news and all that. So it have very, yeah, it have different, yeah, it helps in different ways.
Variations. Yeah.
Very,
Yeah.
yeah.
Are you able to watch football today? Are you a fan of the game?
Uh, I'm a fan of the ball, uh, and the game
The
I
fan of the
I
ball, huh?
watch. I
Explain that to
but
me.
what well, yeah, what I realized is, and this have become the last four years or so, when the pressure have become higher in my work as a script writer and so on, because the film industry and TV industry where I work now for with script can be quite, it's another kind of pressure. So
Yes.
then I found out that it helps if I just go out on the yard here with the ball, and I kick it for a while, or because then this is what my body basically recognize. This is so embedded in
Wow.
in me. So the ball had become kind of a meditation from stress, and a way of grounding, which is an interesting journey. So I do watch games sometimes. I don't really have a team where but but I find its relationship to the actual ball quite interesting, because it goes back to also a little bit how I felt when I was younger, even though it's not about the dream anymore to getting anywhere, but it feels another
Yeah.
purpose. Like some sit down and meditate. I get out there and I kick the ball, in my
Yeah.
jeans,
No, I love that. We all have our thing. Like my Greek culture, we have the worry beads, right?
Yeah,
There's a comfort in that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so I totally understand what you're saying and where you're coming from. Right, we've just got a couple more minutes here. Tiger's film is released in UK cinemas July 1st. It follows Martin Bengson's story here. If you haven't read the book, you should, but you just go watch the film. It's out July 1st at UK cinemas. It is a really engrossing tale about the other side of the beautiful game. And it really tells an honest, authentic story about the pressure and stress of having the spotlight of life on you, especially at such a young age. Martin, do you think football's made progress? We'll get you out on some quick fire ones. Do you think football's made progress in this area? Are you involved at grassroots level on this stuff? What's your take?
I've been involved in that way that I've been lecturing about this story since it came out 2007, like in periods here and there, and lecturing for the Swedish National Football Federation and the young players there in the national team. And the book is part of the education for coaches and so on. So in that way, I'm in this discussion around this topic, definitely. If it's a progress, yes, I think I see that this topic is much more on the table. It's much more discussed and so on. At the same time, we have to remember that money and exposure and everything around football have exploded. So the pressure is much higher. I mean, the players are worth much more money and they are much more exposed nowadays. So we need to work even harder. I mean, in football with this, the organization around young players and how to create a good environment. And then when I talk to players, young players, you hear from some that, in my club we have a therapist, or we regularly get to talk to someone. In other clubs, they watch the movie or they read the book and they say, it's much worse in my club. It's much worse. So I hear both, and that makes me think that, we still have a long way to go. There is, a lot of clubs that need to, step up and take responsible, not only for the individuals, but
not every player is like Zlatan or has that type of mentality and
no, it's different players. It's different players, and they are different, and they have different skills. And Zlatan is amazing, but a team is 11 or 22 players, and they need to work together and fit, and that's psychology. That's group dynamics and psychology, and that's what the teams need to focus more on.
And now you're writing, and you're in our industry. It's amazing, isn't it? When you were younger, if someone told you that you'd write a book and they'd turn it into a film and it would be about you, you'd probably say, "Hey, take my money, you're crazy." But here you are, and now you're a writer. And tell our listeners real quick a little bit of what you're doing now.
Right now, and that's official, at least that I can talk about. I'm writing for Warner Brothers and the Swedish broadcaster Viaplay, and I think it's a Canadian-American production about another sportsman called Börje Salming, who was a pioneer in Toronto Maple Leafs, one of the first Swedes to go to the NHL when in the 70s, when it was brawls and very, very physical play. And so he comes from Kiruna, in the northern part of Sweden, working class guy who lost his father very young, and then went out on this journey and changed the perspective of European hockey players. And that's a series in 6 episodes that I'm just finishing up. We start to shoot in end of August here in Sweden, and then continue in Canada, and so that's what I've been working on mainly. And then I have a movie that I'm about to direct soon, or after this, and so on.
Very nice.
It's a little bit here and there, but
very nice. I have a lot of Maple Leaf fans, so they're going to be all into that. They keep complaining about how they've never, kind of got back to the Stanley Cup. So that would be really interesting. All right. It's been amazing talking to you. Tiger's film is released in the UK cinemas July 1st. You guys have seen it on screen throughout the show today. I love conversations like this on our show. Thanks to Kevin for sending in his too. Thanks to you, Martin. Before you go, in a nutshell, if you could encapsulate in 30 seconds, what do you want people to know about Tigers, the film, your story? What's the takeaway that you want ultimately for audiences to have?
I mean, I go back to the ending of the movie. I mean, what's important to know about the film is that it's not only a film about depression or, a very hard and rough football industry. It is about that in many ways, but it's also about, it's a coming of age story. It's about a young man who finds himself in a world that he realized that it doesn't fit into. So and he breaks away, in a dramatic way, but also in a hopeful way. So yeah, I want the audience to know that there is a lot of hope in this movie, also a lot of humor, a lot of warmth, even though it's a very cold, environment it's in.
Excellent stuff. Well, thanks to you. Thanks to your team. Thanks to Georgie for making this possible today for us to have this conversation with you. Tiger's film out in UK cinemas July 1st, you guys. You're not going to want to miss it. Martin, I look forward to regrouping with you once the Maple Leaves show comes out. It'd be great to have you back on to talk about that. In the meantime, I hope UK audiences enjoy the movie. I did. I know football fans from around the world will enjoy it too. So until next time, Highbury Squaddies, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you again, Martin.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.